The report called him a coward before it ever used the word. It said Sergeant Matthew Ellis had refused a direct order under fire. For a man in Patton's army, there were few accusations heavier than that. Officers could survive bad weather, broken radios, even a failed assault. But refusal under fire was different. It suggested fear. It suggested a crack in discipline. It suggested a sergeant had stopped moving when his men needed him to lead. So when the report reached George Patton, everyone expected the same ending. Ellis was finished. Patton read the first page without changing expression. Lieutenant Howard Crane wrote that his squad had been ordered across an open field to seize a stone barn near the edge of a village. He wrote that Ellis hesitated, refused the movement, and delayed the advance. Then Patton turned the page. No smoke requested. No suppressing fire recorded. No patrol sent through the left ditch. No confirmation of what waited inside the barn. Patton stopped reading. Across the field, hours earlier, that barn had looked dead. Dark windows. Still walls. No German fire. No movement. Just silence. But Sergeant Ellis had seen something else. A firing slit too narrow to be a window. A fence line too clean. A field that dipped just enough to slow running men halfway across. He had told Crane one sentence. "I'll take them across, sir, but not blind." Crane called it refusal. The report called it hesitation. But when Patton looked up from the missing lines, he did not ask if Ellis had been afraid. He asked the question no one had built the report to answer. Was the field covered? The field looked empty. That was the first thing Lieutenant Howard Crane trusted. It stretched between the American ditch and a stone barn at the edge of the village. No more than a few hundred yards of winter grass, broken mud, and low fence posts leaning in the wind. On the map, it was nothing more than a crossing. A short rush, a hard push. One squad across, then another. Then the barn taken before the Germans could settle their defense. Crane saw distance. Sergeant Matthew Ellis saw angles. He crouched near the ditch with his rifle across his knees, studying the field the way older infantrymen studied ground they did not like. He did not stare at the barn first. He watched everything around it. The fence line was too clean. No loose boards, no fresh gaps, no dragged equipment marks. Nothing that suggested frightened Germans had pulled back in a hurry. The grass in the middle of the field dipped slightly, just enough to slow men when they were carrying rifles, ammunition, and fear. A man running across it would lose speed right where he needed speed most. Then there was the barn. Its main door was shut, but not broken. The stone walls were dark with damp. One narrow opening sat above the lower wall, too small to look useful for light, too straight to look accidental. Ellis kept his eyes on that slit. A machine gun did not need much of a window. Behind him, Corporal Daniel Reyes shifted his weight and whispered, "Looks quiet, Sergeant." Ellis did not look away. "That's what bothers me," Reyes frowned. Quiet was supposed to be good. To a young soldier, quiet meant maybe the enemy had pulled back. Maybe the barn was empty. Maybe the field was only a field. To Ellis, quiet meant the Germans had decided not to waste ammunition too early. No probing fire. No nervous shots. No movement in the barn. No helmet flashing where a careless man might peek. Nothing. A place could be empty, or it could be waiting. Crane moved down the ditch line, checking watches, positions, and the timing of the next push. He looked confident, because confidence was part of command. His men needed to believe the crossing could be made. Ellis understood that. But belief did not stop bullets. Crane pointed toward the barn. "Your squad takes that field." Ellis finally looked at him, then back at the slit in the stone wall. The field was still empty, and that was exactly why he did not trust it. Lieutenant Crane gave the order like a man trying to outrun doubt. "Ellis, take your squad across that field." The words landed hard along the ditch. Corporal Reyes looked toward the barn, then back at his sergeant. The other men did the same. In infantry, a squad reads its sergeant before it reads the field. If Ellis moved, they would move. If Ellis hesitated, Every man would feel that hesitation crawl into his own chest. Ellis knew that. That was why he did not answer quickly. He looked once more across the open ground. The dip in the center, the clean fence line, the stone barn with its narrow slit. Still no German fire. Still no movement. Still nothing to prove the danger, except the shape of the ground and the silence sitting over it. Then he turned to Crane. "Not without smoke, sir." Crane's face tightened. "What did you say?" Ellis kept his voice low. "I'll take them across, but not blind." For a moment, the lieutenant simply stared at him. The argument was not just about the field anymore. It was about authority. A young officer had given an order in front of enlisted men, and a sergeant had not moved. Crane stepped closer. "We do not have time to wait. Then give us suppression. Artillery is shifting. Then smoke. Smoke is not available. Then let me put 2 men through the left ditch and check the barn." Crane's jaw set. "You were ordered to cross." Ellis looked past him toward the squad. Reyes was watching him with wide eyes now, trying to understand whether his sergeant was saving them or breaking something that could not be repaired. Ellis understood the danger of that too. Refusing an order could destroy a man's name faster than enemy fire destroyed a body. A sergeant could spend years earning trust and lose it in one sentence if that sentence sounded like fear. So Ellis chose his next words carefully. "That field is covered." Crane's voice sharpened. "You don't know that." "No, sir. That's why I'm asking to look before I put men in it." A distant shell landed somewhere beyond the village, but the barn remained silent. That silence helped Crane. It made Ellis look cautious. It made the field look open. It made the order seem reasonable to anyone who had not spent years learning how machine guns waited. Crane pointed again. "You will take your squad across that field." Ellis did not raise his voice. "No, sir. Not without smoke." The ditch went still, and in that stillness, the report that would later accuse him had already begun to write itself. The barn did not fire when Ellis refused the order. That was what made Crane look right for another minute. The field stayed empty. The slit in the stone wall stayed dark. No German helmet appeared. No muzzle flash cracked from the barn. No bullets cut the ditch. Just wind moving through winter grass, and men staring at a sergeant who had just refused to take them forward. Crane saw the silence as proof. Ellis saw it as patience. "Last chance, Sergeant," Crane said. Ellis did not move, so Crane turned to a small element from the neighboring squad and ordered them to test the crossing near the fence line. Not a full rush, just a push forward, enough to begin movement, enough to prove the field could be taken, enough to show the men that hesitation was more dangerous than action. 3 soldiers climbed from the ditch, then 5. They started across low and fast, rifles tight, boots slipping in the mud. For the first 10 yards, nothing happened. 20 yards, still nothing. Corporal Reyes watched from beside Ellis, his breathing shallow. For one terrible second, he thought maybe Crane had been right. Maybe the barn was empty. Maybe Ellis had seen ghosts in stone and shadow. Then the soldiers reached the dip in the field. Their speed broke, just a little, just enough. The barn opened. The machine gun fired from the narrow slit Ellis had been watching. A second burst came from lower behind the fence line, crossing the first at an angle. The field that had looked empty suddenly had lines drawn across it, invisible lines until men stepped into them. The soldiers dropped hard. One rolled into the shallow dip. Another crawled backward on elbows while dirt kicked up around him. A third flattened behind a fence post, too thin to protect anything but hope. The ditch exploded into movement. Men shouted for smoke. Someone yelled for covering fire. Rifles answered from the American side. But the barn had the angle, and everyone knew it now. Reyes turned toward Ellis. The sergeant was not smiling. There was no satisfaction in being right too late. He was already moving, pointing men into better cover, calling for fire on the slit, ordering Reyes to keep low and pass the word down the ditch. His voice was steady, but his face had gone hard in a way Reyes would remember. Ellis had not refused fear. He had refused timing. The Germans had not been absent, they had been waiting, and the field had been covered exactly where Ellis said it was. Lieutenant Crane wrote the report before the dirt had dried on anyone's boots. That was not unusual. After an action, paperwork moved almost as quickly as ammunition. Men reported positions. Officers counted casualties. Platoon leaders wrote summaries while the sound of the fight still rang in their ears. A report could be honest under those conditions, or it could become a shield. Crane's report was short, firm, and dangerous. Sergeant Matthew Ellis refused a direct order during offensive movement. Those words did not need much decoration. In an army built on command, they carried their own weight. Refused, direct order, offensive movement. Any one of them could damage a sergeant. Together, they could end him. Crane wrote that Ellis had delayed the advance. He wrote that hesitation in the squad line had disrupted momentum. He wrote that enemy resistance later confirmed the need for rapid action. It sounded disciplined. It sounded official. It sounded like a young lieutenant trying to explain why one NCO had failed to move when ordered. But the report had holes where the truth should have been. It did not say that Ellis had asked for smoke. It did not say smoke had not been provided. It did not say there had been no suppressing fire on the barn before the crossing was attempted. It did not say Ellis had asked to send 2 men through the left ditch to check the position. It did not say the machine gun opened exactly from the slit he had identified. And most of all, it did not say that the field had been covered. That omission mattered more than all the language Crane had put on the page. Because if the field was not covered, Ellis looked afraid. But if the field was covered, Ellis looked like the only man who had read it correctly. Corporal Daniel Reyes gave his statement later that evening. He did not try to protect Ellis with emotion. He simply described what he had seen. The sergeant had asked for smoke. The lieutenant had refused. The barn had stayed quiet until men reached the dip in the field. Then the gun opened. Reyes added one sentence at the end. Sergeant Ellis said they would wait until we were halfway across. Major Thomas Greer underlined that line twice. Then he looked back at Crane's report. Refused a direct order. It was clean, too clean. The kind of sentence that makes a battlefield look simple after the ground has already proven it was not. And by morning, that sentence was on its way to Patton. The report reached Patton with the kind of accusation that usually did not require much imagination. A sergeant had refused a direct order. That was how the packet began. For most commanders, those words would have pulled the story in one direction. Discipline first, explanation second. A fighting army could not allow enlisted men to decide which orders felt safe enough to obey. Patton believed that. No one in the room doubted it. But Patton also believed that a report was not truth just because an officer had signed it. He read Crane's statement once, then moved to the attached notes. Major Thomas Greer stood nearby and said nothing. He had learned that Patton disliked being guided toward a conclusion before the paper had a chance to speak for itself. Patton read the accusation again. Refused a direct order during offensive movement. Then he looked for the preparation behind the order. Smoke request, none. Suppressing fire on the barn, none recorded. Reconnaissance through the left ditch, none. Patrol confirmation of the field, none. Patton's face did not change, but his hand stopped moving. That was the first sign. He turned to Reyes's statement next. The corporal had written that Ellis asked for smoke. He asked to check the barn. He said the field was covered. He predicted the Germans would wait until men reached the dip. Then came the patrol note from later that evening. Spent belts found inside the stone barn. Firing slit cut low through the wall. Prepared machine gun position facing the field. Field markers placed near the center dip. Patton set that page beside Crane's report. Now the accusation looked different. It no longer looked like a simple refusal. It looked like a warning that had been punished for being inconvenient. Patton finally looked up. Was the field covered? Greer answered carefully. Yes, sir. Patrol confirmed it after dark. Did the lieutenant know that before he wrote this? He knew the gun opened from the barn, sir. and he knew Ellis had warned him before it fired. Patton's eyes returned to the report. A lieutenant had written that a sergeant refused to advance. But he had not written that the sergeant asked for smoke. He had not written that no suppression was provided. He had not written that the field was exactly the kind of ground a machine gun was built to own. That mattered, because Patton was not looking for a reason to excuse disobedience. He was looking for the truth behind the word, refusal. Sometimes that word meant fear. Sometimes it meant failure. And sometimes, if a report was written by a man protecting himself, it meant the only soldier in the ditch who had seen the danger clearly. Lieutenant Crane entered first. Sergeant Ellis came in behind him. That order mattered. Crane was the officer. Ellis was the accused. In any ordinary room, the rank would have decided the shape of the story before the first question was asked. But this was not an ordinary room. Patton had already read the report. The accusation lay on the table beside the patrol note from the stone barn. One paper said a sergeant had refused to move. The other said a German machine gun had been waiting exactly where that sergeant had warned it would be. Patton looked at Crane. "You ordered him across the field?" "Yes, sir." "Did you give him smoke?" Crane paused. "No, sir. Smoke was not available at the moment." Patton did not react. "Did you suppress the barn?" "The artillery had shifted, sir. We believed the position was not yet active." "That was not my question." The room tightened. Crane corrected himself. "No, sir. The barn was not suppressed before the movement." Patton's eyes stayed on him. "Did you send a patrol through the left ditch?" "No, sir." "Did anyone confirm the field was clear?" Crane's answer came slower now. "No, sir." Patton let the silence stand long enough for every man in the room to feel the order crossing that field again. Then he turned to Ellis. "You told him the field was covered?" "Yes, sir." "You asked for smoke?" "Yes, sir." "You asked to check the barn?" "Yes, sir." Patton studied him for a moment. "If he had given you smoke and suppression, would you have crossed?" Ellis answered without hesitation. "Yes, sir." "First man?" Ellis looked straight ahead. "Yes, sir. First man across." That answer changed the accusation. A coward does not volunteer to lead the crossing once the ground is properly prepared. A coward looks for a way out. Ellis had looked for a way through. Smoke, suppression, recon, anything that gave his men a fighting chance, instead of asking them to run into a machine gun's measuring line. Patton turned back to Crane. "You called it refusal." Crane said nothing. Patton tapped the report. He called it covered ground. Still, Crane said nothing. And that silence was different from the silence in the ditch. This one did not hide a German gun. It exposed an American officer. Patton's voice stayed flat. "You mistook caution for cowardice, because caution came from a sergeant." No one moved. Then Patton delivered the sentence that ended Crane's command before the paperwork was even finished. "You were not leading men forward. You were asking them to prove your confidence with their bodies." Ellis did not smile. Men had nearly died for that lesson, and Patton knew it. Patton cleared Sergeant Ellis of the accusation before the day ended. Not because he wanted sergeants deciding which orders to obey. That was not Patton. He believed discipline held armies together. He believed orders had to move faster than fear. He believed hesitation could kill just as surely as German fire. No man in that room mistook his decision for softness. But discipline was not blindness, and command was not the right to spend men just because a lieutenant wanted his confidence proven. Lieutenant Crane was removed from platoon command pending review. The report was corrected. The field sketch, the patrol findings, Reyes's statement, and the missing smoke request were all attached to the final packet. Crane's original sentence remained there too, but now it sat beside the truth it had tried to outrun. Sergeant Matthew Ellis refused a direct order during offensive movement. Read alone, it sounded like cowardice. Read beside the field, it sounded different. No smoke, no suppression, no patrol. Prepared machine gun position. Field covered from the stone barn. That was the difference Patton cared about. Ellis had not refused danger. Infantrymen did not survive long by refusing danger. He had refused a blind crossing into a machine gun's measured ground, and he had offered the conditions under which he would go: smoke, suppression, recon, a fighting chance. Patton did not call him a hero. That would have made the lesson too easy. Heroes belong in newspapers. Patton was dealing with something harder, the line between obedience and waste. So he made the line clear. A sergeant could not hide fear behind judgment, but an officer could not hide recklessness behind discipline. That was the balance an army needed if it wanted men to keep trusting the orders that sent them forward. Corporal Reyes understood it later, better than he had in the ditch. At the time, he had seen only a sergeant refusing to move. After the barn opened fire, he understood what Ellis had really done. He had not stopped the attack. He had stopped the squad from becoming proof of a lieutenant's mistake. The stone barn was taken later, after smoke covered the field and rifles pinned the slit long enough for men to cross with a chance of living through it. Ellis went first. No speech, no apology. Just a sergeant moving through the smoke, doing exactly what he had said he would do when the ground was no longer asking men to die blind. And that was the lesson Patton left behind. An order can move men, but it cannot make an open field safe. A lieutenant can call hesitation cowardice, but if a sergeant sees the guns before they fire, sometimes the bravest thing he can do is stop his men from dying for a sentence that sounded brave on paper. Patton did not reward refusal. He rewarded the truth behind it.